Hello, and welcome to The Staffing Show, the only podcast that delivers tools, tips, and tactics from the staffing and recruiting industry's top executives and thought leaders.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Staffing Referrals. At Staffing Referrals, we understand the challenges your agency faces every day. From finding high-quality candidates and clients to automating your recruitment process, our platform is designed to help you grow your agency faster. Imagine a world where your agency can automatically build your talent community, improve your recruiters' productivity, and automate manual processes, all the while improving the candidate experience. But don't just take our word for it. Here's what a few satisfied customers have to say. Our referral program boomed after partnering with Staffing Referrals. The technology allows us the tracking, communication, and reporting our traditional referral program desperately needed to unify and expand. Can't imagine our business without it. Are you ready to transform your staffing agency? Let's reduce your dependency on job boards, deliver the experience your candidates expect from a modern business, and turn your talent pool into a competitive advantage. Visit staffingreferrals.com and get ready to grow.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of The Staffing Show. Today, I am super excited to be joined by Travis Arnold, who is the co-founder of Boostie, as well as the co-founder of Herefish, which is now Bullhorn Automation. Travis, good to see you. Super excited to have you on the show.
Hey, buddy. Yeah, good to be here. Yeah, thanks for that intro.
To kick things off, I know a lot of people in the staffing industry already know who you are, but could you tell us a little bit about your background and also how you got into the staffing industry?
Yeah, sure. 2007, I walked through the doors of a software company in Clayton, Missouri called Sendouts, and the rest is history. Sendouts was an ATS back in the day. It was pretty competitive with Bullhorn and MaxHire, for a lot of years, and then eventually got acquired by Bullhorn in 2012. And throughout my period of time at Sendouts, I kind of ran marketing, ran the show there, and then worked with the Bullhorn team post acquisition for a while, and did some marketing services for them, and then we kicked off a little company called Herefish in 2015. And now we've I think the latest is it's automated 2.5 billion things since we were acquired in 2020. So yeah, it's pretty wild. It's been a fun ride. I made a lot of good friends in the space and kind of seen all the things, and that kind of led us to our kind of current venture, which is Boostie and all that good stuff. So
that's awesome, man. I think with Boostie, you've got the team back together, kind of got the band back together.
Yeah, so we do. Kevin, my co-founder of Boostie, was our co-founder and CTO at Herefish. He and I both stuck around Bullhorn after acquisition for around a year, and did some consulting work for Bullhorn after that. And then our third leg of the stool, Chris Dews, our head of sales and accounts, he was our head of sales and accounts at Herefish. So he was with Bullhorn for quite a while post acquisition, and helped them kind of cement themselves as the automation platform in the staffing space. And so yeah, it's good to have everybody back. I get to work with people like you and cool other founders and other software companies. So it's awesome. Pretty fulfilling.
I love it. Today for the audience, we're going to be going into marketing best practices, kind of the changing landscape in the staffing industry. Before we talk about all the fun stuff and what's going on in the market, get your perspective on that. Just tell us a little bit about what is Boostie?
Yeah, the $1,000 question. So Boostie is a talent marketing platform. That's what we say for, Google search. But really, when we think about that, it's how do we kind of bake in marketing best practices that you've used in SaaS capacities for 20 years. And how do you bring that to a space that's kind of dying for this stuff? Since I've been in the space since 2007, people have job boards are great, but I kind of want to get off it. I want to figure out how to do this myself. We're still kind of answering that question with Boostie. So we kind of look at the entire marketing funnel that exists in staffing and hiring. And we have a platform that addresses that. So at the very top of the funnel, we have our promote tool that targets the right individual person for a specific role. So rather than posting on a job board where anybody can go apply to it, if we're hiring, electricians, we put this ad in front of electricians on Google search and social. Down funnel, again, kind of like if you take the mental model of e-commerce, if you've gone to a site, you've been targeted, you've gone to the site, you haven't done something, they'll throw a pop-up your way. In our case, our pop-up is just a more active job alert where we get a little bit of information that we can kind of use to start progressively profiling that passive candidate and putting them into a like actionable talent bucket. So that's our capture tool. And then below that is our apply tool, which to me is like really where the rubber meets the road. I think kind of the current state of affairs is we ask the same exact questions regardless of the job. And we also complain, like as a space, we complain about we get so many, so the quantity is so high, we have no way to figure it out. And I think that's, it's self-inflicted wound in some cases, but we look at the applied process as really where the friction exists because it's so unflexible. So you look at some of these web platforms, you ask first name, last name, email address, phone number, resume. That's kind of table stakes. And while that's cool, it doesn't really help my recruiter make a decision on who to talk to first. And so our apply tool, we look at the individual job. We base rules on like titles and categories and locations. And then we ask specific questions that, really help qualify a person on the intake. And then, we have, AI and automation kind of sprinkled throughout the tool. Obviously, we built Herefish, so automation is going to be baked in. And then while we were building is kind of the surgence of AI and large language models. So it's really kind of baked it in at every little step that we do with the tool. So our goal with building software has always been we shouldn't make our customers have to bend and jump through hoops to figure out how to use it. Like it should just kind of work. And that's what we're doing with Boosty to make this like very complicated, big, fuzzy, scary cloud of marketing and give you the keys where you put a script on your site, it's no code and it's just off and running. And now you can, reduce dependence on job boards and start owning your marketing universe a little bit more. So
that's great. And I'm super excited to see what you guys do, because I know we talk about this a lot on the show, but the spend in marketing, kind of the marketing expertise that's improving and increasing in the staffing industry as a whole. I think the industry is still largely a laggard when it comes to marketing tech and how things are being approached. I think the most recent stats I saw is like staffing industries are usually spending 1% to 3% of revenue, and what a normal business would be 5% to 10% of money going towards marketing. And with that, let's go ahead and jump in. So like you kind of touched on a few of the elements here, but what are you seeing in terms of the changing landscape and where staffing is going when it comes to job boards and sourcing?
Yeah. The job board one is tricky because I do think there's some relevancy there. So I'm not like this. I don't think job boards are this big baddie that you have to like completely disregard. Like there's some roles that job boards are great for, like that you can get in front of some really active candidates. But to spend your entire budget, it's like 93% of the budget goes to a job board. It doesn't even get categorized as marketing. It's usually operational expense at this point. And I think that's kind of silly. It's just kind of like, well, at the same time, you're complaining about that we get too many leads, we get too many candidates.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, like let's just stop for a second. If you're getting 300 applicants per job and you don't even talk to those 300, like, why do you still do this? Like, what's going on here? So what I've seen and what we've talked to, we have staffing customers, we also have corporate customers. It's kind of like they have this very similar problem. Like we get a lot of people, we just don't even know where to start for one. We have no way to qualify people on the way in for two. And it just gets to this point of like, well, we spent $1 million last year. Let's spend $1 million this year. And I think what we've started to see is more of an understanding that we need to start owning our world a little bit more. You look at a typical ATS, there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of candidates in there, largely unengaged, largely kind of left to die and be forgotten. I think tools like Herefish or Bullhorn Automation kind of help with that. But ultimately, been this reliance on a single source. And me as a marketer, like, cool. Like if I'm first starting a company, I will probably spend more of my budget on paid media, on AdWords. In this, we'll just use that as an example. I might spend 90% of my budget on AdWords because I don't have any other channels that I've built up yet. But as that starts to move, as my content marketing gets better, as my presence gets better, as my outreach and email marketing and all that stuff gets better, my lead source doesn't have to be super dependent on paid all the way. It can be this owned stuff that I have internally. And then you kind of move on. You have like a pretty healthy marketing mix, but staffing's still like 93% is on this one source. Yeah. It's never moved. It's never gone to this other spot. So to me, we're seeing more of those conversations. I think Indeed in particular has, kind of raise their hand like, hey, this staffing space is like $700 billion, not just $36 billion. So we might have to go charge after that a little bit. And so if I were in that world, and I would kind of like, oh, okay, let me think about this a little bit more. Like, I don't need to spend a bunch of money with Indeed when I can, kind of start leveraging my internal database from a marketing perspective. Those are the conversations that we have kind of every day, and that's been cool. And then, kind of layering on the tool set and layering on a mental model that everybody understands of e-commerce has been pretty helpful. So
it is interesting. I don't think I always think about it the way you were just describing it, but most businesses, you look at any other sector, SaaS, you're going to start with paid ads, and then eventually you're like, okay, like let's start building content. Let's build our organic platform. Let's make sure that we are divesting for paid as quickly as possible, because and this is the true for software businesses. Paid ads will drive leads, but the quality is going to be lower, consistently lower than somebody who finds you organically, finds you through their content. And that's usually like a pretty rapid shift. In the staffing industry, it seems like it's kind of the de facto, like, oh, we just spend this. This is just what we do. That's how we get candidates. And I think it's changing.
It's changing. It's bureaucratic. It's like we spent it last year, we have to spend it this year, and it's like, oh, okay, that's silly. For one, like we just kind of keep mainlining the job board drug, and like it's insane. So yeah, it's making a change. I think for me, like your biggest marketing asset is your website, and so I think you've got you've had this reliance on job boards, and your path away from that, or be less dependent, is start investing in what you own. You own your website, you own the leads in your ATS. Like, start to like work with that a little bit more. There's no point to keep paying for the same people over and over again. Your clients are posting to Indeed already, so why are you doing the same? There's a bunch of little things you could start to whittle away, and start to pull that spend internally a little bit more on other tools and other services that aren't just, again, they're not just completely dependent on a single source. So yeah, that's what keeps me up at night, that there's one source that people spend money on. It's like, Jesus, I can't imagine it as a marketer. I'd be like, the minute you turn off that tap, everything dries up. So
what happens to your business?
It's completely non-sustainable. Like, when you look at it that way.
Indeed doubles their prices tomorrow, what happens to your business?
Right. Exactly. Yep.
I was having a conversation with Dan Morey recently, and he was talking about just in terms of differentiating your agency. And right now, what we're hearing a lot of is we need more clients, depending on what sector you're in. Job orders clients is still one of the top things that's demanded right now. The supply and demand, I guess, chart is kind of flipped on its head still in staffing right now. Where it's harder to get job orders than it is to get candidates. And with all of that in mind, the customers can post to Indeed just as easy as you can. I think you used to be able to say, hey, we're a staffing agency. We've got access to this job distribution. We process these jobs. They're connected to our ATS. We have all this unique components around how we manage job boards. But I think that a lot of that has kind of gone away, and it's not as unique now. And I think that there's more than ever customers looking to hire a staffing firm. They're looking for access to something beyond, can you do the same thing on Indeed as me? And I think that's a huge risk that exists in the market today.
Totally. Absolutely. Like, you look at the talent pools, like, and this is another area that we like, kind of keeps me up at night. Like, you've got this ATS, it's kind of loose data. You might have categorization on a candidate, but it's like, okay, how do you take your ATS and like make it actionable and put it to work? And that's, again, another way of like, that's your secret sauce. Like, how do you engage with this group of people that live inside of your ATS in a way that makes you super valuable to a company that you're trying to fill roles for? It's not just like, again, anybody can go post to Indeed and get the same candidates that you're doing. Let's kind of up your value and your enterprise value a little bit more, of like, here's why we matter. We have, front end, we have 1,000 front end engineers across the United States that we can deploy very quickly for pretty much a wide band of roles. And it's that kind of being able to dip into your ATS, look at exactly who you have, and put them to work, or at least submit them very quickly. That's going to be the game changer, I think, kind of going forward. And then, I don't know, you look at the agency of tomorrow with AI and automation, that changes too. Like, traditionally a 20 user, like 20 recruiter shop, it'd be 20 million in revenue. In the future, a 20 user shop could be 100 million in revenue. We don't know, but we do know that AI and automation maximize, recruiter productivity and output. And so what's that look like, in the future? So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Yeah. I think short-term wins, it's like, again, start bucket all your stuff and understand who you have inside your ATS.
And I think, some of what you're talking about, there's obviously the AI category, which I don't think we can go a podcast without talking about it, especially the AI.
It's 2025 now. So yeah, you can't talk about anything.
Recently tell me, they're like, if you aren't building, AI agents or their software as a service no longer. The only thing that matters.
Yeah. Everything's agents.
But when it comes to, you and I have talked about this a little bit before, but the kind of shift of thinking about a staffing agency from more of an e-commerce mindset. I always think about the travel industry because it's near and dear to me. It's my background. Like that, that feels like a very close parallel. I think e-commerce is same parallel. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing from that perspective and how the e-commerce mindset could help staffing agencies improve how they're operating today.
Yeah, I think every single person that's listening to this podcast has bought something online. I will raise my hand and put that flag in the dirt and die on the hill. But
I want to know.
Please, or that, and you'll get a Boostie swag bag.
I'll have you on the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Please. Yeah, how have you lived this way for so long? I think for me, it's like you look at e-commerce, and we've all been targeted on social media or somewhere where it's like, oh, that's a belt. That's a cool belt. And they targeted me because I'm outdoor. Like I go outside, I ski, I bike and do all this stuff. And that belt is for those type of people. So they had a profile. They knew the ideal person that would buy that belt. I clicked it. I go to the site. I'm not ready to buy. They throw an offer in front of me. And then, 2 days later or 2 weeks later, I end up purchasing. So like we all know that flow, right? And it's pretty efficient. It starts at the top of the funnel by targeting the right ideal person. And when I look, again, another kind of rub against job boards is like posted a job for a licensed clinical social worker, and I get people with forklift credentials applying for the role. And again, I think the industry beats up on forklift drivers. I'm not trying to. It's just the easiest example that we can all give because like it literally happens all the time. So I think it's like, let's start with like who we're targeting first. Like let's have a pretty good ideal candidate profile and persona that we go after. And then we just kind of work down the funnel. Like again, follow what you've experienced by buying online and apply that to your current like candidate experience. And it's probably very misaligned. Like if you're targeting passive candidates and you're going on job boards, you're not targeting passive candidates. Like you may have a whole sourcing team and they do an excellent job trying to get in front of people. But let's get in front of people that are just like casually browsing on the web or might be passively searching for a new job but they're not ready to commit to a specific role or anything. So it's like, how do you balance between like, hey, we're targeting the right persona. We want to capture that person, put them in a bucket that we can like stay engaged with them and then get them to a point of like where the checkout process is easy, right? I think the most optimized experience we encounter as like humans is the checkout process at ecom. Like you hit a button, like you've done it once. You don't have to do it the same. You don't have to enter your credit card when you're on your phone. Like it's just there and you can go to the races. And, we look at that the same way. Like it should be very easy to apply if you've applied before. And even the first apply should be pretty easy, stepped through and very relevant to the role. So it's not all roles require a resume. So why do we ask for it? If that is a fall off point or an abandonment point that we want to eliminate. And so as far as what you can learn, I think just go through your process. I've heard this for the past 10 years, like just go through your apply process and you'll see how bad it is. And we're still having those conversations. So I think it's gotten to a point where there's people kind of trying to address this. And I think that's great for the entire space. I think that if you can streamline that experience from top to bottom from a marketing standpoint and get the right person with their eyes on your company in the first place, and you do that at scale, you're building the engine to have long-term sustainable growth that isn't reliant on a single source. That's how I look at it, just based on kind of my experience of running SaaS, marketing teams. Like you pay for a little bit and you try to own as much as you possibly can because it's more sustainable, and you own your outputs a little bit more when you kind of go that route. So
we are. I'm hearing more from agency owners who are like, I want to have as little percentage of my placements coming from
Yeah.
boards as possible over time, and which makes sense because then you have a more scalable, more profitable business. On the e-commerce side of things, the apply thing, I mean, the one that comes to my mind, I always think of Shopify, and like I used to go find a product on a website and then go
Yep.
to Amazon to buy it because I didn't want to go because I didn't want
Dude, yes.
I was like, I don't
Yes.
want to go through this process. I don't want to
Yeah.
I don't want to buy direct. I have to go
No.
create an account, and like, especially if I'm on my phone, it's like
Yeah.
impossible. And
Sure.
now you get to a website that has Shopify, and there's like the one click, it has your credit card, and I'm like, I'm happy to buy direct. And what that does
Yeah.
for the margin that brand just got,
Mm-hmm.
because they optimized one little process, they just
Yep.
avoided an Amazon fee, which is
Yeah.
significant at scale. So I think it's the same concept applies for what you're talking about with Boosty right now.
Totally same. The genesis of Boosty, after Bullhorn and kind of the acquisition, kind of took some time off. We had a couple kids, like wasn't planning on starting anything. And then 23 rolls around. I'm like getting a wild hair, and I'm like buying a pair of shoes or something. I'm like, damn, that was pretty easy. And then it's like, oh, like what if we targeted the right then it's just like your mind starts unraveling, and I've spent like 3 months in the hole kind of digging into how we could use alternative channels to really drive this kind of e-com process. And we started with Boosty Promote, and then always baked into that was this apply process, and then we just decoupled it 6 months ago and started getting it on clients' websites. And it's just that same thing of make it easy, people will do it. You can make it easy and still qualify. And I think that's what people get hung up on. It's like, well, I should only ask first name, email address. And it's like, no, if you set this up from a user experience standpoint the right way, it makes it fun to use and makes it feel good. Like when you can just tap through and you're just tapping through, like answering a couple questions and you submit, awesome. And then on the backside of that, we're putting a fit score that's comparing to the job description. So there's a bunch of stuff that you can do that for the candidate feels great. It doesn't require them to like pull out their blood sample or anything like that. It's just simple and clean. They can do it on their phone when they're riding the metro to work. So it's kind of the thought there.
Yeah, and one thing you've touched on a little bit, but the retargeting is something that when I had my marketing agency, the first thing I did for every brand that I worked with, regardless of if they wanted it or not, was set up retargeting, because it's just a base layer, I think, must have for every business. And the ROI is there. It's not always the easiest to attribute it, but it is a awareness play that you can make to the people that that are literally at the bottom of the funnel that have engaged with your platform a lot. Do you have any idea how many people and like what percent of staffing firms are doing that? Like, when you talk to staffing agencies, are any of them running retargeting?
0%. If I were to say people I've talked to, I do know, we do. To be fair, we've talked to some folks after, and they're like, oh yeah, but we've done that before, and we do a little bit of this. It's for us. It's always, again, what's the most relevant thing. So again, I don't want to go down like a product path, but kind of similar to you, like you just deploy this for everyone. Part of our promote tool is retargeting is baked in. So every visitor that hits the landing page, we automatically categorize. Again, we use an AI agent to automatically categorize those folks, kind of normalize all that data. And then we can say, okay, for these jobs in this location, here's an ad that's like currently being promoted. Let's put it in front of this person. And so it's that kind of ever present position that a company can have that they just haven't had before. So it's something that they didn't have to do. They didn't have to set up anything special. Visitor hit their site. They didn't do what we wanted them to do. We didn't apply. And so now let's follow them around, and let's just have our brand in front of their face when they're hanging out on ESPN or they're doing whatever. So to me, I love retargeting. It's one of my most favorite things. I think there's a way you set that up where it makes sense. You drive them to a thing with paid, and then you have this very low cost retargeting channel that's always running to the most relevant people, the people that have interacted with your site in some capacity and showed some sort of buying signal you can get in front of. So yeah, we love it. We're fans. We may have something up our sleeves regarding retargeting in the future, but
I think when I think about retargeting and staffing specifically, and also like alternative sourcing, some of these areas that we're talking about, the real value is that you're activating talent that isn't going to go apply necessarily to the 20 of your competitors' jobs.
Yeah.
You might actually be finding candidates that aren't, literally just one click applying to everything that they come across on Indeed, and therefore finding candidates that are unique to the network. So
totally. Yeah. I look at, I look at job boards and like they really target like an active job seeker at the bottom of the funnel. Like they're already there. They're ready to apply. You have them. And that's great. Like if you can get a percentage of your people that you hire from that, and it's pretty cost effective, you can get some eyeballs on your jobs, no question. Like that's going to happen. You're going to get applications. That's just the nature of it. But to your point, like everybody has talked about for decades, like I love these passive candidates. I love referred candidates. Like those are my favorite ones. They have the best placement rates. They have longer tenure. We redeploy them more often. All the things that staffing firms care about usually comes from non-job board candidates. So again, it's kind of a mismatch of like what people say they really want, but where their money is going. And I think I use it's a drug. They've been on this drug for 30 years. I think since again, '07, it's been exactly what people have wanted to get off of. But here we are 18 years later and we're having the same, very similar conversations to back then. So it's just kind of wild.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's an interesting market because it's also Indeed is targeting the customers equally and literally they're not working as closely with the staffing agencies as they are with the customers of the staffing agencies in many instances, which is an interesting component to it as well. So
we see that. I mean, we work with corporate customers too, and they're like, yeah, we have jobs on Indeed. It's like, they also work with staffing firms that have jobs on Indeed. It's like the same job. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we having this conversation? Again, to your point, like the unique value of a staffing firm is like the relationships they have with their candidates. So I don't think you're getting that through Indeed if you're only. So
well, now we live in. We were talking about this yesterday in the conversation, but the world of AI automated applicants and also the proliferation of job postings that I think there's a Wall Street Journal stat about 20% of all job postings aren't real.
Just fake.
Something absolutely crazy. And so like it used to be that I remember the resume black hole was like 1% response rates or something crazy.
Sure.
And now it's like not only are you unlikely to get a response, but there's also a whole series of jobs that just don't exist. Just getting candidates.
They just don't exist. I think it's great. It's like the AI generated job is going to fight with the AI generated resume and the applicant. It's like, where are we going? So I mean, I think we look at that as like, we look at, candidate data that walks through and like, okay, is it augmented with AI? And we look at that and it's like, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think that's good. Like if I was applying to jobs today, I would definitely use some sort of language model to help me kind of round out my skill set to make sure I was aligning with the job description. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think, is there a way you can use that? And are there other fraud signals that like, oh, a bot filled this out and here's how we know that? I think that's where we look at, again, owning the apply process on a client site kind of it gives us a unique insight into that process and like tracking where people are coming from. But ultimately there's never going to be 100% fail safe against it. It's all moving so fast. And again, it's fun to watch. The fake job orders kind of perplex me a bit. It's like, is it coming from a specific brand? Is it just a fake company that's doing it? It's like, it's kind of weird.
It is weird. I mean, if you could spin up an AI agent to apply, but then also do the job.
Yeah. Well, soon. Yeah. Right.
Like it'll interview and also do the work. It'll just run full circle. So
I mean, what's stopping it?
Your AI agent a social security number, and you're good to go.
I know. It's really getting to the point of like, if I'm a corporation or even like a staffing firm, I've got a job to fill. Like, okay, what do I do? How do I figure this out? Like, is 60% of this work able to be done by an AI agent? And so I think those are questions that companies have to ask themselves. Like, I think we're definitely going to see some impact. What it looks like, I don't know. I always use the ATM example. Like ATMs hit the street in 1975. Good TED talk I like to share like annually, I think. But the fear was it's going to put all these tellers out, and the tellers are going to be just homeless living in the streets. It's like what happened was those tellers then became like loan officers, and those companies all exploded. So are we kind of freaking out for no reason? Again, I think we look at the agency of the future. 20 people, used to be, about 20 million bucks, and now 20 people maybe $100 million bucks. And how does that math all work out in the future is yet to be seen. But
yeah, it is going to be interesting. I follow this person on TikTok, actually, who's an AI expert. He's
not for long.
Yeah, not for long. Having
Yeah.
4 days left. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
2 of his predictions for the year is one, if you're at a large corporation, you're going to have a AI coworker, that you're going to have an AI agent that you are working with. And then his outside the box forecast was that there will be the first paid AI OnlyFans.
Sure. Guaranteed. Like just in no time will that happen. Especially this year. 25 will be a year for that.
25 is the year. I know we've kind of bounced around a little bit on the marketing side, but if you're a staffing agency owner, what are some quick wins? If you were to give advice in kind of where the digital landscape is today, what would you suggest that they take action on?
There's facets there. I think if I were to walk in the door of a staffing agency as a marketer, I'd be like, okay, what's our audience look like? Let's make sure that our ATS and the audience we're trying to talk to is the right one in our ATS to start. Like, we have these types of jobs. Do we have these types of candidates? That's the first step. And then to me, I'm kind of going to try to minimize my kind of paid spend, kind of paid ads. I think for like, traditional, I call pay ads to job boards, and figure out is there a way to cut that from 100% to 60%, and then where does that fill? And I think it's investing in your website. It's investing in, self-servedly, it's investing in Boostie. But I think if you would invest in something like Boostie, there's plenty of competitors. Or if you were to say, there's referral, like I think referrals, like staffing referrals, like I'm not trying to pump your tires here, but I think that you look at that, like most companies have a referral program, and that lives on a spreadsheet, and it's highly untracked. It's all the things that but it's like, okay, let's just start to like systematize these things that we've been doing manually forever that are actually real drivers to growth and revenue for us. Then we can see, okay, now let's be more discerning about what we spend externally, be it a job board or whatnot. And then that's when you can start to say, okay, now let's analyze all this. Let's have a good sense of like the, attribution reporting of like this source led to this placement, these leads, and then starting to go from there. I think that's kind of how I would approach it. Like, you can't just kind of boil the ocean with marketing. I think it definitely takes some time to get your arms around. And if I were to be like, I'm kind of empathetic to the firm owner, it's like, we've just done this. This is how we've done it for 30 years. So like, we don't know any different. So it's like, I don't expect somebody that owns a firm or like an ops person or a CIO that's kind of in charge of this now to say, oh, now I'm a CMO all of a sudden. I know all these like very in-depth marketing, facts and processes. It takes a little time. And I think we're starting to see it. You brought it up earlier from a business development sales standpoint. I think sales is still kind of like a hot button for some folks. But if I go back to like 08, 09, that it was a hot button then. Job orders kind of died, bunch of candidates, a lot of layoffs. And then that was like the hottest thing for like 2 years. And then it just went away. And not that it is going to follow the same cadence as this time, but I definitely think you should Tom Herbal, you should always be developing business. So I think that's one thing, like from a process standpoint for staffing firms, like you just kind of always got to be doing it rather than when it hurts. But I think you got to look at it all. And again, I'll just keep beating it. Like, you just got to own your marketing universe a little bit more than you do today. And that starts with the audience. It starts with your assets, like your websites, emails, outreach, all that good stuff that you have control over.
I don't have a direct stat on this, but when you look at the agencies that have scaled rapidly over the last 5 to 10 years, it's the ones who dialed in. I mean, it's hard to tell if it was like chicken or egg. Like, did the marketing look good first, or did they?
Sure.
I think for the most part, they focused early on marketing, invested in marketing, figured out who their audience was, figured out their positioning, and then that's actually what was the key driver in terms of scaling faster than
Totally.
competition. So,
And you know how it is, like riding a rocket ship, like on a marketing standpoint, it's super fun. And it's like, oh, we hit it. Like now we're like, we're owning everything. Every email we send out, we get this return. Every post we make, we get that. And so I think you look at those companies that kind of spun up in the past, like you said, 5 years, and you see this. Yeah, they have great brands. They say the right things to candidates. They say the right things to potential customers, and they actually care about those experiences a little bit more. And I think it's part of the digital transformation scale that we're all still in. And that's just it takes a bit for firms to adopt that. But I think it's speeding up. I think AI's helped that. I think some external pressures, obviously economic factors, help that too. So I'm super encouraged. It's cool to see, marketers from outside the space starting to get into the agency world and the staffing world for sure.
Yeah, it does seem like the agencies are starting to adopt more modern tactics and strategies.
Yeah.
Last question I've got for you, then we'll do the speed round.
Oh, sweet.
What advice would you give to somebody before entering the staffing industry?
Oh boy, as an owner or
let's go as an owner.
anything owner. I would say, how do you figure this out at a minimal level of overhead? So that means like you're not hiring recruiters, you're not hiring account managers right away. It's like, how can we use tech to scale this in a way that's kind of responsible and sustainable, and then start hiring those folks with that tool and with that process in place where it's like, hey, you're a recruiter, you're going to be able to do $5 billion worth of business, no question. And that's where it's like, to me, is super interesting. I think the tech is there now where you could go in, have a blank ATS, get some customers, get some job orders, start sourcing in a smarter way versus just posting and praying on a job board. I think ultimately that's how I would like start to talk about it. And I've had this conversation with agency owners recently, and it's like, yeah, it's like the whole world's changing. What do we do? I think talent marketplaces are super interesting. Those are cool things to come out of it. So yeah, I would just kind of have them be on the tech train early versus later, and have a kick-ass brand that kind of addresses honestly like concerns candidates have with working with staffing firms. Sometimes like the employer brand is kind of misaligned and it's not great. So it's, how do you build this trust pretty quickly with a candidate you just built the relationship with? So that's how I would broach it.
That's great. All right. So speed round of questions. What is an unusual habit or an absurd thing that you love?
Oh shit. Taco Bell.
Taco Bell. All right.
It's absurd. And I know it's awful, but I love it. Yeah.
What book or books have you given most as a gift, and why?
Rework by 37 Signals guys. Why? Because I read it in like 08, 09, whenever it came out. And I've read that thing like 30 times. I think what it does is ground you in like, here's how work can be. It doesn't have to be insane. The follow-up book to that is It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work, which is also a book that they that they wrote, because our whole goal with any company that we built is let's have a calm, measured company. Doesn't have to be insane. We don't have to be high stress and like not sleep and like hate our lives. Like so those are the two books. The one though, I'd say Rework, hands down. Read it if you haven't.
I'm pretty sure you recommended that to me. I think I read that.
Yeah. You. Yeah. I may have given you as a gift. I'm sorry if I didn't, but I've given it to a few people.
In the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
Sleep matters. That's probably the number one. I spent my 20s and 30s as a short sleeper. I'd go to bed at midnight, wake up at 5, get to work by 6, 7, and just hammer for 15 years. And I thought, like, okay, kind of change all this. So yeah, I haven't set an alarm for like 8 years, 9 years, I think. So it's been pretty great. Yeah. Unless I have to, like say like an early flight or something.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. You just got that internal clock just waking up. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I get 2 kids too. They help with that.
Travis, it was great having you on. Do you have any closing comments for the audience?
Other than I think I'm excited about the future for kind of the hiring space at large. I think we've gotten to a point where we have the tool set and the tools available to really change how candidates interact, how the companies and the internal people interact, and just have meaningful connections with everyone. Like I think think the goal is like, let's make software better for everyone. And we're getting to that point where not only the software great, but the hiring processes and the experiences can be great because the tools are there. You don't have to build everything from scratch now. It's already exists. So I think I'm just encouraged with the future of all this.
That's exciting times for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Travis, this is a great conversation. Thank you so much for being on. I hope you have a great day.
You too, buddy. See ya.
Thanks for listening to The Staffing Show. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at staffinghub.com to never miss an episode. Until next time.